Rapunzel, her new life, and happily ever after forever. In Romford town, where the buses hum and streetlights start to glow, Rapunzel felt her spirits sink, quite dismal, dull, and low. The monotony was a monotonous drone, day in, day out the same. Day after day she felt a lack of spark within her name. "It's the time of life," Prince Jack would chirp, a lenient sort of man, but his lackluster chores were akin to chores since time began. Her morning was reminiscent of a cage, and vice versa too. She was reluctant to maintain the life she had to do. The infancy of her triplets was a cacophony of sound, where energetic Francis danced and leapt upon the ground. Erratic Fergus was enthusiastic, loud, and full of play, a cacophonous boy whose juvenile shouts would fill the day. Their infantile demands were non-existent in her dreams, but in reality, they were a heap of messy, noisy schemes. To say they were redundant would be far from the truth indeed, for they were existent everywhere, a wild and growing seed. Rapunzel would long to see the tower walls of old, and long for times when stories of her hair were always told. She thought of her former life as superior and grand, compared to the latter one where laundry ruled the land. She tried to retain her patience, but her heart began to rend. She felt like a fish out of water, waiting for the end. Prior to this, she'd been a queen, or so it seemed to be, but now her preceding glory was a fading memory. Her parents, King Xavier and Queen Mia, were ecstatic and elate. They wanted to exhilarate the triplets' birthday date. They'd adorn the hall with banners, an exemplary display, to elatedly ensure it was a distinguished sort of day. The standard was super standard. The party plans were set. They were exhilarated by the precious joy they'd get. They would not overlook a thing, no detail was too small, to demonstrate their love for the precious children in the hall. But Rapunzel felt infuriated. The noise began to mar. Her mood was atrocious, like a horrendous rusted car. There was a stench of soggy nappies and a scent of spilled puree, an appalling and dreadful start to such a sour day. To make matters worse, her fury was a rotten thing to feel. Her ire was inferior to her husband's calm appeal. It was bad enough to lose her sleep, but not only that, but also she felt her fury grow beneath her lilac hat. Ginger was a notorious cat, loquacious and quite vocal. His exclusive phrase was known to every Romford local. He spoke in English too, of course. With competence and style, his exemplary manners could make any stranger smile. He currently held the birthday cake, a standard work of art, with consistent frosting layers that would warm a mother's heart. Hedda Dierbart, he purred, a cake for all to see, a distinguished masterpiece for the birthday jubilee. But Rapunzel was incensed. Her ire began to escalate. The monotony of parties was the final thing she'd want to fet. She felt irate and livid. Her fury was a fire. Her ire was a cacophony that rose up ever higher. "I object to this," she shouted with a petulant old cry. "I protest this juvenile party," with a furious glint in eye. She was incensed by the clutter, the excessive toys and noise. She felt her ire sabotage her usual motherly poise. She intentionally swung her arm and marred the perfect cake, a vandalized disaster that was a big mistake to make. It wasn't unintentional. She wrecked it with a blow. Her sabotage was intentional, a marred and rotten show. Add fuel to fire, she kicked the gas, a horrendous thing to do. Her error was appalling, to say the least. It's true. Jack watched in dismay. Her big error made him stare as she vandalized the party with a livid, wild-eyed glare. The triplets were inconsolable. The twins began to cry, and Queen Mia was crestfallen, with a tear within her eye. To reduce to tears her mother was the final straw indeed. King Xavier was distraught by his daughter's rotten deed. "No wonder they are sobbing," Jack said with a heavy sigh. "It's not surprising they are scared, with fury in your eye." Consequently, the joy was gone. The room was full of gloom. A dismayed and atrocious vibe had filled the living room. Rapunzel fled the house in haste. She had to vacate fast. She could not tolerate the shame of what she'd done at last. The circumstance was dire, and unfortunately grim. She ran toward the parkland on the city's outer rim. She would set foot in Romford Market, then avoid the busy street. She tried to elude her family and the people she might meet. Then suddenly, a woman stood. Miss Patel was her name. She looked exclusive, sharp and cold, like a flicker of a flame. "Unfortunately," Miss Patel said, "you seem a little stressed. I propose a small request to put your heart at rest." She made an inquiry with a snobbish, icy tone. "Would you like your former life to be a queen again?" It was an irrevocable offer, a U-turn from the now, a dilemma for Rapunzel, who made a silent vow. She signed the contract quickly, for her fury was her guide, ignoring the implication of the darkness deep inside. Suddenly, the world went dark, then shifted with a crack. There was no U-turn possible. She couldn't go quite back. She was alienated from the park, in a tower tall and gray. The Romford life was outdated, a thing of the past today. Initially, she felt elated, contrary to her fear. But all along, the omen of the contract was quite near. She had to start from scratch again, in a world that felt so alien. She felt like a fish out of water, or a juvenile mammalian. Her parents entered through the door, but they were hostile and cold. They were reticent and distant, with a story yet untold. They were unconcerned by her tears. They showed a lack of grace, as if she were a stranger who had taken someone's place. They would shun her every question and omit her from their care. She was forfeit of their loving hearts. A vacancy was there. Their unconcern was severe. They would refrain from any hug. Her prior life was obliterated, like a stain upon a rug. Then Prince Jack arrived on horseback. He was a warrior bold, who tried to intimidate with a heart that was so cold. He would mimic her soft speaking with a petulant old sneer. He was superior and harsh, and he would not let her near. He was loquacious in his boasting, but his kindness had to cease. He was the antithesis of the man who brought her peace. She had to abstain from crying as he spoke of battles won, for the man she loved was non-existent, like the fading sun. And Ginger was a giant cat, 10 feet from tail to head, who would bicker and dispute with every word she said. His incessant growling was excessive. He was relentless in his spite. He would not relent or give in, even in the dead of night. He would intervene in silence and squabble over space. A quarrel was his only wish within that lonely place. His vocal Faroese was gone, replaced by severe roars as he paced the vacant hallway and the cold and stone-tiled floors.
Yes.
Rapunzel saw the big error, the big mistake she'd made. Her regret was like a heavy stone. Her courage started to fade. She had to reconsider all her petulant old ways and reassess the monotony of her happy Romford days. She would recall the triplets' laughter and review their messy play. She had to recap the precious things she'd thrown so far away. "Are you for real?" she asked the wall. With ire at herself, she'd put her truly indispensable life upon a shelf. Miss Patel appeared again. "You're on borrowed time, my dear. You're on the verge of staying in the direst sort of fear. The peril is severe," she hissed. "At stake is all you know. Your life is broad and barren. It's time for it to go." She was on the brink of losing all, in jeopardy and pain. The implication was quite clear. She'd not see home again. "The dire circumstance is this," the villain said with glee. "You're disqualified from happiness for all eternity." But Rapunzel chose to confront her. She would oppose the lie. As opposed to giving in, she'd look the villain in the eye. She would resist the contract's power. She was resistant and strong, for her love for Jack and babies was irresistible and long. She would insist on going home. She was insistent and bold. She would protest the rotten deal that had been so coldly sold. Miss Patel tried to intimidate, but Rapunzel would object. Her fury was now focused on the things she must protect. She grabbed the glowing paper and she revoked it with a tear. She would disqualify the magic and obliterate the fear. She would eliminate the darkness. She would ditch the tower's gloom and confiscate the power from the corners of the room. She would deduct the sadness, a deduction made in haste, for she wouldn't let her precious life be such a tragic waste. The contract was revoked and torn. Its power was expelled as the atrocious tower walls began to crumble where they dwelled. Giant Ginger tried to strike, but she would retaliate. She would thwart the villain's plan before it was too late. She had to intervene and stop the sabotage and strife to fix the malfunction of her messy, magic life. The tower's automatic spells were shifting into manual. She was prone to win the fight, no longer feeling fragile. She would do away with shadows. She would withdraw from the lie as a cacophony of magic started soaring to the sky. Vacate this place, Rapunzel cried. Give up your vacancy. I disengage from all your spells and set my spirit free. She was engaged in a battle for her home, but from her heart, she would eliminate Miss Patel and make the tower part. The villain had to resign her post. She had to withdraw in shame. As Rapunzel obliterated every mention of her name, the tower was now vacant, and the word began to spread as the light at the end of the tunnel illuminated simply blind. She overrode the second. It was back to the drawing board, and the unfortunately, the king was back, and furthermore, the mess, her fury had begun to wane. Her anger was much less. Her fire started to fade away, a gradual release, as she felt a gradual returning of her inner peace. She no longer faltered. She was home where she should be, a light at the end of the tunnel for her whole family. Her precious triplets were right there, so indispensable and sweet. They were the complement to her that made her life complete. She gave them each a constant and unfailing. She felt her own competence returning every day. Though they were sometimes incompetent to maintain or stay, she had sufficient love for them and plenty of goodwill. Her heart was adequate and full. Her patience was not insufficient. She was qualified for motherhood and feeling quite proficient. She would maintain her happiness and retain her Romford pride with consistent love for everyone who lived there by her side. She was tolerant of messes now. She'd tolerate the noise, for these were superstandard gifts, her girls and her brave boys. Of course, it was quite ironic, or an irony to see, that the monotony she hated was her greatest luxury. She wouldn't add fuel to fire or add insult to injury. She was happy in her Romford home, in all its messy glory.